Well, Peter Weir talking about Fearless. Opening image. It looks like Jeff Bridges is coming out of some luxuriant, tropical, exotic jungle. But it's only a cornfield. Right away, you're saying something here. He is in a jungle in a way, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And the fact that it would turn out to be a cornfield, suddenly, this tells me a lot about how you like to work. I guess I'd love to hear you comment on the decision to open it with a shot like that.
Well, it was planned from the beginning, but I could have stayed in that cornfield for days. You know, it was not just the cornfield, but we had some smoke to lay, which was really, of course, coming from the accident. We had a wind machine that could stir the leaves in various ways. In fact, I did shoot a great amount of footage, but you know, chose the best images to create a mood. In fact, you'll notice the credits have been moved to the tail end of the film.
Right.
It has the title of the movie, because I wanted, in this case, to throw the audience into a situation immediately, not being distracted by the writing on the screen. So I'm glad you felt that.
You planted 85 acres. Do you do that sort of thing on your ranch?
My cornfield.
Do you have a ranch? It's a ranch plus, I mean, you grow crops and all of that?
Oh, no, I don't have. I have a property north of Sydney, but it's in no way a farm. It's a domestic setup, but quite a bit of land, but not. We have a tropical garden, in fact, which I did work on, and my wife and I made that garden. It's quite like a little piece of barley almost.
I like to imagine all kinds of exotic blooms coming out of that garden. So that would fit.
Yes.
This morning in a conversation, it was delightful. You referred to your presence in Sydney and in Hollywood. You said you're a kind of a Jack and the Beanstalk type character and setup. I would love for you to explain that a little bit.
Well, you know,
the giant was even in there.
That's right. Yes, you know, the farm is Australia, and that's where I live, and you know, my family, and we have a cow, so to speak, and we've got this beanstalk there, which I climb, which leads to the land where the giant lives, which is Hollywood, and I go up there every now and again, and I play the harp, and you know, get given a golden goose, tell a couple of stories over dinner to amuse the giant, and the giant's always saying, "Why don't you stay? Why do you want to go home? You know, you've got your room here." But I like to go back to the farm, you know.
Your life is so full of illusions, ones that you've made yourself. You also talk about the potter's craft. As a filmmaker, you're working in a business of high-profile personalities, artists as heroes sometimes. But you, at least in some interviews, have claimed to want to withdraw from that. You're a craftsman.
Yes, yeah, I feel more comfortable with that. And I think, you know, referring to the potter, it was that idea of pottery in Japan as being an art form more than painting and so forth. And for the potter there, you know, it's if the gods choose to touch the potter's hands, that is a work of art, rather than the Western sense that the artist decides that this will be a work of art.
When you were first making films in Australia, especially with The Breakthrough, with Hanging Rock and Last Wave, what were you then, the artist or the potter?
I think I was probably trying to find my place in the scheme of things. I mean, in those early days, I think there was a certain amount of schizophrenia for me. That is, you grew up with the twin influences of European cinema through the film festivals and American cinema through, you know, one's local movie house and television, loving both of them. And as an Australian starting to make films, not quite sure where you fit it in the scheme of things. Some of Picnic has got a European look to it, you know, Last Wave's got someone said it's like an American picture made by a Frenchman or something. Its pacing's European. And I think I found my sort of place really is here, but not now. It's here in Los Angeles and Hollywood, but about 1934. I would have come over as one of those guys.
A Fritz Lang type.
That's right, yeah, Suitcase Family, you know, and made those kind of films.
But what films? I mean, do you take a secret delight sometimes in the really baffling ambiguity of the endings of things like Hanging Rock and Last Wave? While everybody's racing around for meetings, do you sort of sit back and kind of snicker through your fingers a little bit?
No, I'm probably, I've got my fingers firmly on my brow thinking, is this the right ending? You know?
Especially with Last Wave.
That's right, yeah.
Tell me about your contacts with the Aboriginals. You've known some,
yes,
and apparently you've learned some from them.
Yes, yeah, with tribal people. But that again is going back to the Last Wave period, which was the end of the 70s. I've had no contact since then, because you'd have to go out of your way to have that contact.
Is there an equivalent here?
I would think certainly with Indian peoples. But as far as I know, there is a very small group who are still practicing tribal traditions and initiating the young. I mean, the problem, of course, in any tribal group today, having some contact with the West is the young kids who are listening to modern music and are involved in the contemporary life. Very hard to get, obviously, to get them to be to join fully in the traditional rites.
So little time. I've heard so many stories about you carrying the boombox about with you and getting tapes of music to your actors. What is the deal? You're a thoroughgoing musical person.
Directing DJ. I find that music can say things sometimes that words can't. As a director, sometimes you have to be careful you don't talk too much. It's really not about talking. Sometimes you'll see a director at work in a sort of recreation, perhaps in a movie or something, and they're talking and they're talking to the actor and they're explaining, and the character's this and you should try it again with something or other. And in actual fact, most don't do that. They don't say very much at all.
Well,
it's
finally,
inhibiting.
I will ask you to say one thing, at least in closing here. That cornstalk / jungle, would you prefer to see it as the jungle that's in the cornstalks, or that the jungle is really only a cornstalk after all?
I don't mind as long as you enter my world, and that world, that I throw you into my world, which begins in that cornfield. It's the world of this film, Fearless, and it's my kind of world I make, for which you pay $7 to enter. It's where nothing is quite as it seems. Therefore, a cornfield could be threatening.
Oh, it sounds like Hanging Rock now. Are you going to take to your grave the secret of whether that's based on a real story or not?
Yes, I think I should leave a letter somewhere, I think.
Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to
Peter
meet
Weir,
you.
the director of Fearless. We're both in Los Angeles. I'm John Tibbetts for KCTV5.